Thank you so much. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm sorry I'm late, but it's great to be here. I always love speaking at men's conferences. So thank you for being here. A gentleman named Mark McCann brought me from the airport. He took me out to supper last night, and I felt at home because on the menu was something called a Wisconsin burger. And that's what Mark had to eat, and it was the only burger with cheese on it. I've already been called a cheesehead today, right, Sam? So glad to be here from Wisconsin. So, gentlemen, let's pray. Let's begin. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Saint Joseph, patron of fathers, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, men, I have a question for you to ponder this morning. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being great and 1 being not so good at all, how would you rate the relationship you had with your father as a child? Let me give you a little more of my background. I grew up in central Wisconsin on a dairy farm. I was the oldest of 9 kids. I had 3 brothers, 5 sisters. We were raised Catholic. We went to church every Sunday. Unfortunately, Mom and Dad drank a lot, so we ended up being as kids, we received the brunt of their frustrations, their anger, their stress. So there was a lot of physical and verbal and emotional abuse in my family. Eventually, I moved on. I went to college. I received my business degree. I met my future wife there, and now Christine and I have been married for 24 years, and I have 4 boys, ages 22, 19, 14, and 11. And I am blessed to be a husband. I'm blessed to be a father. And you know, for the last 8 years, I've been looking into this subject of fatherhood and the impact that a father has on a child. And I have come to the conclusion that the wounds that we receive from our dad, these father wounds, are having an enormous impact on society today and is having devastating consequences everywhere. But we do have hope because Jesus Christ is on our side and he comes to heal the brokenhearted. So I'm extremely excited to talk about this topic today. You know, I know we've all been wounded by people in our lives, right? We've been wounded by our fathers, of course, but also our mothers, siblings, teachers, babysitters, bullies on the playground. But I really think, and I want to argue today, that the wounds that we receive from our father are the most intense and overwhelming wounds of all. When I was about 12 years old, we had just put new linoleum flooring in our dining room. And one day I must have been bored, so I took a pitcher of water and I poured it on the linoleum floor. And my brothers and sisters and I, we went to the far end of the living room, and then we ran as fast as we could and had a slip and slide inside the house. But in order to play that game, I had to move the dining room table to the side. And when I did, I put a little gouge in the new linoleum floor, about the size of a dime. I don't even know if I realized that I had done it at the time, but Dad eventually found out. He said, "Did you do that?" And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I think I probably did." And then without warning, he began to smack me on the back of the head as hard as he could, probably 9 or 10 times in a row. And I remember my eyes were shut tight as he struck me. And I could see stars with every blow to my brainstem. Well, I walked away from that absolutely furious that he had done this again to me. I was so angry at him, so bitter towards him. And I remember walking to the corner of the next room where my dad could not see me. I imagined picking up a shotgun and pointing it at him and pulling the trigger as if to kill him. My hatred for him was so deep at that time. So you can imagine the mistrust I grew up with my dad as I grew into my teen years and beyond. and this bitterness and this sense of unforgiveness for all the times he had hurt me and my brothers and sisters, and the shame he had placed on me every time that he abandoned me from the love that a good father should provide. And I think, without even realizing it, I made a promise to myself as a child. I made a vow that I will never be like my father. And the relationship I had with my dad on a scale of 1 to 10 was probably maybe a 2 at best. The pain was deep in my heart, but I just stuffed it away for many, many years. So what is it about fathers? What is it about fathers that have such a profound effect on children? Let's look at the perspective from a little child with a great dad. This little child sees dad as someone who's strong. Someone he's the one that drives the family vehicle. He sits at the head of the table. He always has money in his pocket. He showers you with love, and he throws you up in the air, and you giggle with joy. He declares that you're smart and that you're funny, you're handsome. If you look back into history at all the fathers, let's go back to the biblical patriarchs, like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. These guys were given power to lead God's people. The early church fathers, like St. Clement, St. Polycarp, St. Ignatius, these men were given the authority to speak on behalf of the church. The founding fathers of our country, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin. These men were given the task of establishing order in this new country. This power, authority, order that these fathers had. And then let's take a look at the greatest earthly father there ever was, St. Joseph. Just a humble carpenter. And yet he is the terror of demons. All of these men used their God-given strength to be great fathers for countless others. And you know what? The creator of the universe reveals himself as a father to us. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth. And he's laid down the physical laws of the universe. Every galaxy that moves, down to every electron that moves, obeys the physical laws that the Father has laid down. There's this great power and authority and order that the Father has established. And he gives that power and authority to us as earthly fathers. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 2214, states that divine fatherhood is the source of human fatherhood. So we are given this power and authority and this order from God the Father so that we can rightly order our families and society. And if you look out in the world today, things are not going as planned, are they? Let me give you some statistics. 43% of the children in the U.S. right now live without a father. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. That's 5 times the average. 70% of all young men incarcerated in the U.S. are from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts are from fatherless homes. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders are from fatherless homes. And it goes on and on. This is from the U.S. Census Bureau and the Center for Disease Control. So, why is this happening? I'd like to suggest that it could be what's called the father wound. Let me give you a definition of what the father wound, my definition of the father wound is. But you know what, let me mention this first. Back in 2010, I went on a men's retreat in Florida. And guys, if you get a chance to go on a weekend retreat somewhere to do something, please do it. It's a life-changing thing, and this was life-changing for me. But in order for me to go on to this retreat, I needed to read a book called Wild at Heart by Christian author John Eldredge. Raise your hand if you've read that book. Okay, several of you have. If you haven't, read that book, Wild at Heart, John Eldredge. About halfway through that book, there was a chapter on the father wound. I had never heard that term before. And as I read further, I discovered this book is about my life, how a father hurts his son through neglect or abuse. And the son grows in bitterness and hatred and unforgiveness towards his father. This book was about me. So I was excited to go on that retreat, and it changed my life. So let me give you that definition of the father wound. The father wound is simply the deficiency or the absence of love from a person's earthly father. The deficiency or absence of love from a person's earthly father. So it can be something like abuse. The father wound can be caused by abuse, physical, verbal, sexual, psychological, emotional. The wound can also come from neglect. When dad passively or maybe purposely withholds his love and attention and affirmation from his child. The wound can also come from absence of a father. Maybe dad died from an early death, or there was a divorce, or maybe dad just one day up and left the family. In every case, this wound is caused when the child feels abandoned by his or her father's love. As Christian author Gordon Dalby puts it, quote, "No pain strikes more deeply into a person's heart than being abandoned emotionally or physically by dad." All right, guys, so what type of father did you have? Did you have a high-performance dad who had high expectations of you, high standards? You had to be perfect. He got upset over you if you failed at something. He compared you to others like a sibling. He didn't want to be embarrassed by you. That's the high-performance dad. Maybe you had a passive father, not emotional, did not give you much affection. He wasn't very connected to you. You didn't feel a bond with him. He wasn't engaged with you personally. He was preoccupied with other things. Often these are workaholics or alcoholics. The third type is the absent father, the father who's missing due to divorce, maybe imprisonment, suicide, or other death. Maybe he's very sickly through disease and just can't be with you. Or again, just left the family one day and abandoned them. The fourth type, my dad fits this one definitely, the abusive father, the hitting, slapping, the beating, swearing, belittling, sometimes even sexual abuse is involved. And these are oftentimes alcoholic fathers. The fifth type is the authoritarian father. Severe disciplinarian, lots of rules, little room for error, very little display of love. And then lastly, there's the affectionate dad. He's loving and caring, spent a lot of time with you, patiently corrected your mistakes, affirmed you, loves you unconditionally, like God our Father in heaven. Maybe your father was a combination of some of these. But if we think about God the Father, he created Adam and Eve. In Genesis 2, Adam and Eve were naked, but they felt no shame. The next chapter, another father enters the scene, the father of lies. And he convinces Adam and Eve to sin. And then their eyes were opened. Adam and Eve's eyes were opened. And they felt that shame. You can imagine the devil dancing with glee like Smeagol did after he bit the finger off of Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. You remember that scene, jumping around because he now had the one ring. And I can imagine the devil after he convinced Adam and Eve to disobey God. I can imagine the devil saying something to Adam and Eve like, "You fools! You should never have been created. Go, run, hide, and never come out ever again." And so they covered themselves with those fig leaves to hide their shame that the devil had placed upon them. Hell is enraged with humanity because we are made in the image and likeness of God. And the devil can't get to God, so he comes after us. And he wants to hide us. He doesn't want our humanity to be seen. But our Father in heaven, he's like a good father. He won't abandon us, and he did not abandon Adam and Eve. He actually went out looking for them later that day. And he said, "Where are you?" And Adam answered, "Here I am, but I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." And then something interesting happens after the curses take place. The serpent's curse of eating dirt all your life. The woman who will have pain and labor. The man who will sweat, toiling all the time. After that all took place, there was also the promise of a Savior. And God the Father made for Adam and Eve coverings of skin. It's a small detail that we might just pass over. But that was a symbol of what was to come, the Savior. And the flesh of the Savior, blood would be shed, just like an animal's blood had to be shed for that skin to cover Adam and Eve. And God took that shame of the devil and he placed on someone who would take that shame upon himself. Jesus Christ in Hebrews 12:2, St. Paul says this, he endured the cross and scorning its shame. By his wounds we are healed, Isaiah 53 reminds us. So our Father in heaven does not abandon us. But we still, in this fallen world, we feel the effects of abandonment and shame, especially when it comes from our Father. Dr. John Bradshaw, counselor, he's a best-selling author. He has a book called Bradshaw on the Family. And in this book he says, quote, "The preciousness and uniqueness every human child possesses are destroyed through abandonment. The child is alone and alienated. This abandonment creates a shame-based inner core," end quote. I absolutely fell in love with this picture here when I saw it. And it's become the theme of my talk. And you can see that little boy wondering what to do now that Dad has abandoned me. And the shame as he faces his friends, knowing that they may have dads, but I don't have a dad anymore. Or if I do have a dad, he neglects me or maybe abuses me. And that shame continues to pile on this little child's heart. So I want to talk about shame for just a bit. Two types of shame. The first shame I want to talk about is a healthy shame. The healthy shame of feeling guilty because you did something wrong. You made a mistake. You maybe stepped on someone's toes. It was just an accident. So you say you're sorry. Or maybe you committed a sin. Maybe you used immodest language at work. And so in confession, your conscience is telling you, hey, you made a mistake. Let's correct it. It's something that comes from within us, this healthy shame. It's a good thing. Then there's what's called toxic shame. Toxic shame is when you feel defective or unworthy as a person. Healthy shame says, I made a mistake. Toxic shame says, I am a mistake. Like the story of a young boy who wet his bed, and his father found out, so he made that young boy, I think he was about 5 years old, wear the stained underwear on his head and stand in the kitchen all morning. Even when relatives, I think it was an uncle and aunt that came by, and the boy still had to stand there. Toxic shame. The time when my sister and brother, we were at the town fairgrounds for the day, and at 4 o'clock my father said, he said, be back at the van at 4 o'clock so we can head home to do chores. My brother and sister failed to arrive at the appropriate time, so Dad went looking for them. When he found them, he slapped both of them across the face in front of whoever was nearby. Toxic shame placed on them. They came back to the van just sobbing because of what had happened. And it probably wasn't the sting of the pain anymore. It was the embarrassment, the humiliation, the shame that they felt when that happened. That shame, that toxic shame can build even in increments. Small times of neglect when maybe dad comes home from work, sits down at the TV, and the message is, I just don't have time for you. That's the message that the child receives. So I must not be important. There must be something wrong with me. I must be a mistake. My dad, the man who I most look up to, doesn't care about me. Toxic shame. It's placed on us by others. It damages a person's image of him or herself and negatively affects one's confidence. And the message, of course, is there must be something wrong with me. You want to hide yourself, you want to protect yourself, and you end up shutting the door to your heart because you don't want anybody to see that shame, so it's covered up. There's a young boy that, well, he's not young anymore, but when I first met him, he lives across the street from us. His name is Tristan. Tristan was 7 years old when we moved across the street from their family, from his family. And just a few weeks ago, I stopped by to visit them, and for whatever reason, he had a shirt off. Maybe it was a hot day or something, and there was tattooed across the left part of his chest the word pain. I asked Tristan, what's this all about? What's the meaning behind it? The backstory is that when he was 12 years old, his father left him. Due to alcoholism, he was hooked on pornography. His dad just left the family. So he's left on his own with his sister and his mom. And I kind of befriended him. I tried to be a father figure in his life. I asked Tristan, what does this mean, this pain? He said, Bob, there's pain here in my heart. But you know, my heart is still there. And in a way, he's telling the world, listen, my father shamed me, but I'm not going to let it ruin my life. The pain is there, and I'm letting everyone see it. And my heart is still there. I'm not going to hide my heart. Tristan is 19 years old now, and I do things with him along with my children. I bring him with my boys when we go out on adventures and such, and he's come somewhat of a son to me. Beverly Engel is a marriage and family therapist, best-selling author, and she says this about shame. Quote, shame is the most destructive of human emotions. It can damage a person's image of themselves in ways that no other emotion can, causing a person to feel deeply flawed, inferior, worthless, and unlovable. End quote. Gentlemen, I know and you know this, we have a destiny. And I'm not talking about the destiny like a Luke Skywalker destiny to save the galaxy, okay? But we have a destiny to bring the love of the Father to others. We need to reveal the love of the Father to others like Jesus did. And we have chances to do that within our own families, with our children, with our grandchildren, with other children who we can become father figures to. All right, so guys, how many of you have at least one son? Raise your hand. Wow, okay. How many of you have at least one daughter? Okay, wow. How many of you guys had a father that had at least one son? Raise your hand. All right, some of you caught that. All right, just making sure you're awake out there. All right, okay. So, for those of you that have sons and you've been a son, what does a boy need from a father? You're a young man, you see dad out in the garage, he's working on the car. Hey, let's go see what dad's doing. What is this little boy saying in that moment? He's saying, Dad, will you teach me? Dad, can I spend time with you? Dad, do I have what it takes to be a man? Hey, son, go get the crescent wrench from the toolbox. The boy looks in the toolbox, he finds the locking pliers, brings it back to Dad. No, no, stupid. Listen, I said the crescent wrench. You know what? Just get out of here. You don't know what you're doing. Let me just take care of this. And that little boy walks away, abandoned by his father's love, shamed by his father, a deep wound in his heart. It was a teaching moment that Dad missed out on. What does that little boy need to hear? Dad, am I strong? Dad, am I brave? Am I capable? Daddy, do I have what it takes to be a man? Gentlemen, I don't think we understand the power of our words. I know sometimes I don't when I speak to my children, especially in times when I'm maybe a little upset with them. The book of Sirach reminds us from chapter 29, verse 17, quote, "A blow from a whip raises a welt, but a blow from the tongue smashes bones." A blow from the tongue doesn't break bones. A blow from the tongue can smash bones, which are much harder to heal from. I'm sorry if I'm overquoting people, but there's a lot of experts out there that know much more than I do. So here's another one, Dr. Meg Meeker. Dr. Meg Meeker is a pediatrician and Catholic author. She has a book called Boys Should Be Boys. And she says this, quote, "The question for every boy is, am I good enough for my dad?" The question is not whether he is good enough for his dad to like him or love him. It goes deeper. What is wanted is a fatherly affirmation of a boy in his entirety as a whole person, end quote. All right, a lot of you guys have girls. What does a girl need from her father? She puts on a beautiful dress. She runs into the living room all excited. What is Daddy going to say about me? Because what he says goes. She starts twirling around in front of Dad. Dad's busy watching his favorite TV show or watching a football game. "Hey, what are you doing? It is time for your bed. Why are you here? Get to bed now." And this little girl walks away with a profound wound to her heart. Daddy could have affirmed her in her beauty, but failed to do so. And that night she cries herself to sleep. What does a girl need from her father? She needs her dad to let her know, "Daddy, do you see me? Am I lovely? Daddy, will you protect me? Am I delightful, Daddy? Daddy, am I worth fighting for?" You know, girls can hear that they are beautiful from their mother, which is great. And for any moms that do that, thank you for doing that. But when she hears that she is beautiful from the masculine side of her universe, it takes on way new meaning. My sister was about 8 years old, and it was her birthday. A brand new bicycle was her birthday gift. And she was excited about riding around in our yard on the driveway. And something went wrong. So, the chain broke, a pedal fell off. I don't know what happened. Something broke on it. She went to show it to Dad, and Dad said, "Okay, I'll take it uptown and get it fixed later or replaced. So just put it in back of the van." So my sister put it in back of the van. She didn't put it in the back of the van. She put it in back of the van. Well, Dad, a couple hours later, he had to run a quick errand to a neighbor to pick up something. And he ran over the brand new bicycle. Of course, he was angry. And he picked up the bike, brought it into the house, and in a cruel, sarcastic tone, began to sing "Happy Birthday" to my little sister. I wasn't there when that happened. My sister told me this story as a 24-year-old woman, sobbing, saying, "Bob, do you have any idea how much that hurt this little girl?" My sister, she's in her 40s now. Last month, she was in detox for about a week. Does this have something to do with it? I don't know. But the times I've talked to her, I have a feeling that the relationship she had with my dad, her dad, may have been part of the suffering that she's been going through now and throughout her life. David Popenoe, in a book called Life Without Fathers, says this: fathers are the first and most important men in the lives of girls. They protect them, providing them with a sense of physical and emotional security. Girls with adequate fathering are more able, as they grow older, to develop constructive relationships based on trust and intimacy. So when a girl doesn't receive that affection, that affirmation from dad, she finds it elsewhere. Why do girls dress the way they do immodestly? They're looking for attention. They need it somehow, some way. And boys are, of course, willing to give that attention to these girls, but it's not the way it should be. You know, girls, whether they're 3 years old or 17 years old, they need those hugs and kisses from dad. They may be uncomfortable, but they are thirsting for that love and affection from their father. When Jesus was baptized, God the Father proclaimed, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased." And you know what? As children of God, we want to hear that message from God. We want to know that He's well pleased with us, whether it be God our Father or our Father here on earth. We are wired to want that. It's just the way we're built. In God's Word, in the Bible, this is what our Father is telling us. Even though we may not have received it from our own earthly fathers, this is God the Father telling us this. And let me tell you why I want to quote some of these Bible verses. Sometimes what we see in our earthly father gets projected onto God the Father. And we have a growing number of atheists in our world today, or agnostics, who just don't care about their faith or hate God because the association between that person's earthly father and God the Father. That word Father is there. But this is what God our Father is for us. He tells us, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made." Psalm 139. Isaiah 49 says, "Even if a mother forgets her child, I'll never forget you." Isaiah 43, "I have called you by name and you are mine." 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18, "I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters." So we are hungry for that affirmation from our Father. Affirmation, what does that word mean? Affirmation means to show encouragement, to show admiration for someone, to let someone know that they are unique and precious, that their heart is good. My son Riley, when he was 3 years old, I got a jump start on him to help him learn reading. And so at 3 years old, he's reading things, and we would be driving down the road, and he's reading the street signs. He's reading the signs on the businesses and restaurants. And every time he would do that, I would say, "Riley, you are so smart. I'm so proud of you. Good job. You can read." My son Jared, when he was younger, he would draw pictures of pencil sketches of dragons and swords. He loved that type of thing. And he would bring them to me. And here's my chance as a daddy. What can I do for my son right now? So I said, "Oh, Jared, I love how you made the teeth on this dragon. The tail, I love it. Oh, Jared, check out the sword. I love the design of that handle. Good job. You've got a great talent in drawing, Jared. I'm very proud of you." My son Kyle, he's the one that plays lots of sports. He walked up to me one morning with a sleeveless t-shirt. He said, "Hey, Dad, how do you like my muscles?" So I let him know. I just grabbed him by the shoulders. I said, "Son, you are so strong. I'm so proud of you. I wouldn't want to meet you in a dark alley." Man, he ate that up. He loved that. But it's fun things like that we can do as dads, as grandfathers, to our kids and grandkids, to affirm them in their talents, in who they are, what they do, It's so important for them to hear these words from us. Sometimes when I put my boys down to bed at night, I'll caress them and kiss them, and I'll just say, well, not my older ones anymore, but I'll say, I'm so glad you were born. I'm so proud of who you are. I'm so blessed to have you as my son. Just affirming them in who they are to me. Other things we can say to our kids. Just some examples. I'm so blessed to have you in my life. I have faith in you. My son, you have such a good heart. My daughter, I love being with you. My son, it's okay to make mistakes. My daughter, you are so kind, so smart, so helpful. Son, you're doing a great job. Another thing that we should consider is affirming our children's emotions, okay? So let me explain emotions just a bit. Guys, that's one thing that we don't want to share too much, right? All right, okay? But emotions, that's part of who we are. Emotions control how we act, oftentimes. Steve, I'm going to use you as an example. You don't have to say anything. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but let's say Steve, he's listening to me for this past 45 minutes or whatever it is. He says, Bob, he shouts out loud, Bob, you're an idiot. I don't want to listen to you anymore. Okay? Steve would never say that, okay? He's a great guy. But let's just say that happened. I'm going to have an immediate response to what he said. Some type of emotion is going to well up in me based on my experiences in life, my confidence in myself, in who I am, my temperament. I might, an emotion that might arise could be an emotion of nervousness, like, how does he know I'm an idiot? Or maybe something more along the lines of embarrassment. You know, I can't believe Steve said that in front of this whole crowd. Emotions are unreasoned responses. We don't think about what we are going to feel. It just happens, right? It just happens. So, you've probably heard things like this as a kid, or maybe you've even said some things like this to your children. Don't be such a baby. Or how about, don't be such a scaredy cat. Or stop being angry. Or how about this one? You've heard this one before. Stop your crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Right? Yet these emotions of fear and sadness and anger, these are emotions that children have, and especially in those younger years. They don't know how to process them. And when a father tells a child, stop it, it's telling that child, what you are feeling is wrong. There is something wrong with you. So stop it. I'm going to suggest that we look at it from a different perspective. That we affirm our children in their emotions, especially our younger children. Hey, let me ask this question. How many of you have been angry this past month? Raise your hand. I love the honesty, guys. Okay. All right. These things happen. Emotions happen. How can we affirm our children? I'll give you a great example. Every night we try to pray the rosary and do our nightly prayers as a family. One evening, my son Jason, who loves building Legos and figurines out of Lego pieces, we're about to say our prayers. He comes into the room. We're all sitting down, ready to go. He comes in just crying. He lost one of these little tiny pieces that I step on in the middle of the night from his figurine. And he said, I can't find this piece. And he's just crying and crying. And in my younger days, when I didn't understand the importance of a father, I would have said, Jason, stop your crying. Get in here. It's a school night. We need to say our prayers so you can get to bed. But I looked at it from a different perspective that day. And I said, Jason, come here. Come here, Jason. Sit down on my lap here, buddy. He was probably about 5 or 6 years old. I said, Jason, you're really sad, aren't you? You lost that Lego piece. Yeah, Dad. Well, Jason, I have an idea. We're going to say prayers now, okay? I have an idea. Why don't we ask St. Anthony to help us find this piece that you lost, okay? And that little boy just melted in my arms as I held him tight and just hugged him and kissed him. He felt safe with his dad. And my feelings, he felt were okay to feel the sadness because I, as dad, had affirmed him in that feeling of sadness. We have the power to do that as dads. I think I found that piece later that evening, probably around midnight when I went to the bathroom. St. Anthony. All right, gentlemen, now that we know how we can cause wounds to our children, what do we do with the emotional wounds that are buried deep in our own hearts? We've been hurt by so many people in our lives, and let's face it, we have hurt others, right? If we are honest with ourselves, we have wounded many people in our lives. Sometimes people, we don't even remember what we did to them. But how do we overcome the wounds that we personally have ourselves? I want to talk about a concept called inner healing prayer. Has anyone heard of inner healing prayer ministry at all? Please raise your hand if you've ever heard that. A couple hands go up. Okay, something in our Catholic faith that we don't talk about a lot, but I think it's something that's very important. Inner healing prayer. You know, when we're wounded as a child, it hurts. So what we do is to protect ourselves from that pain, we make a promise to ourselves so that we don't feel this pain again. Remember earlier in my talk, the linoleum flooring story? I made a promise that I would never be like my father. I wanted to protect myself from anything that had to do with my father. I didn't want to be reminded of the pain in my life about my father, so I didn't want anything to do with it. So I subconsciously, without realizing, made a promise to myself. This promise is called an inner vow in prayer, in inner healing prayer ministry. An inner vow. Here's another good example. My first communion day, I'm in second grade, received Jesus in the Eucharist for the first time. It was a wonderful day. Mom and Dad, all my brothers and sisters, we sat down for dinner. We had grandpas and grandmas there. Uncles and aunts were even there. So it was a big feast. Well, I left the kitchen table early in the meal to go get a spoon or fork or something. I came back and I accidentally bumped the leg of my sister's high chair and spilled her milk. Wham! Dad smacks me in the shoulder. Keep in mind, I'm about 7, 8 years old. And he said, "What did you do that for?" In front of everyone. And I remember looking up at the table and no one was looking back at me. They had seen it. They had heard what had happened. And I walked away, tears welling up. My special day was gone. And I sat down, and without realizing it, I think I made a promise to myself, an inner vow, that I will never let anyone humiliate me like my dad just did in front of everyone, shaming me like he did. The rest of the day was quite sad for me. So what's the opposite of humility, guys? I was humiliated by my father. The opposite of humility is pride, right? Pride. So when I made that promise, without realizing it as a little kid, I didn't know I made an inner vow to myself. I won't let anyone humiliate me. I became a very prideful person. I was always right. My brothers and sisters were always wrong. I was so prideful, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I would buy myself Christmas presents and put them under the tree. To Bob from Robert. Who does that type of thing? The great thing is I always got what I wanted. But my pride was so inflated as I grew up. It was embarrassing. But that's what these inner vows do to you. They start to control your life. These inner vows, they're made early in life, and often, you don't even realize it. They often start with the phrase, "I will never," or "I will always." It's like building a wall around your heart to protect yourself from the hurt that you've received from a person. You've made a judgment against that person. This person is bad. My father is bad. I don't want to have anything to do with him. He humiliates me. I'm going to protect myself. I will never let anyone humiliate me. I will never be like my father. These inner vows we subconsciously make throughout our lives as children. But we can never become the person we're meant to be, though, when we do this. When we put a prison cell around our heart, we can't fulfill this great destiny that God has given to us. The destiny to change the world, even if it's in your own family or in your own neighborhood. Changing the lives around you, we can't do effectively when we're wounded like this. And these inner vows are controlling our lives. Let me give you some more examples of inner vows. I will never need anyone, because your father comes home late from work. He's out of town for long periods, so you feel unimportant in his life. How about I will always be skinny? Maybe you're a girl and dad called you overweight one day. I will never get angry. Dad yelled a lot. There's a man, I heard a story, that he was a man who with a 3-year-old boy who ran out on the street. The 3-year-old boy ran on the street. Dad saw it from the front door and could not even yell out to his son and get off the road. He had to physically run out there to grab his son because he had made a vow to himself, I will never yell like my father yelled at me. How about I will never trust men again because maybe a girl was molested by a father or stepfather? How about I will never cry? Dad said, don't be such a baby. And then you wonder why at a funeral you can't shed any tears because of the humiliation you felt when your father said that to you. I will always be perfect because your dad had very high expectations of you. So you do like what I did. Everything had to be perfect in my household. And I even labeled the pantry. There's where the fruit cans go, the vegetable cans go, the noodles go here. And my wife came up to me and said, Bob, that's not normal. to label the pantry. You just go in there and get what you need. So I won't ask you how many guys label their pantries. I won't. Or how about I will never be a man? Because Dad said, you throw like a girl. A friend of mine said that his son and his oldest son would always go hunting, deer hunting with him in Wisconsin. And his second oldest was now of age this year, so he could go hunting with them as well. Well, his second oldest had no interest in hunting deer. And he said, Dad, I just don't want to go. So Dad said, fine, you just go put on a dress and stay with your mom, and we'll go out hunting ourselves. Okay? Now, my friend told me this story. He felt terrible about saying that, but can you see how this can affect a child so deeply? We're looking at our society today where homosexuality is out there. It's a topic no one wants to talk about. But can you see how this happens? Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, remember this name, Dr. Joseph Nicolosi. For 30 years, he studied this topic on homosexuality, and he's come to the conclusion that it is a young boy looking for that masculine love from his father and never finds it. Don't believe the lies that are out there. And this is not Dr. Joseph Nicolosi only. It's all over the place. So look into that. I encourage you to do so. So we make these inner vows, we make these promises to ourselves. And in this promise, we also decide not to forgive the person who wounded us. We make a decision of unforgiveness. And when we do that, when we choose not to forgive the person who hurt us, other problems begin to arise. In inner healing prayer, we call these negative traits or patterns that begin to develop in our life, in our lives, like uncontrollable anger, which I definitely had a problem with. We call these bitter fruits in inner healing ministry, bitter fruits. So you guys, if you could picture a fruit tree with me, picture a fruit tree. Underneath are the roots of the tree, underneath the ground, okay? Those roots represent the wounds that we have, the shame that is there, the abandonment we felt from Dad. And in the middle of that tree is the deepest root of all, the root of unforgiveness. Of course, we hide our emotions, we put on a mask. The grass covers up everything, so we don't see what's underneath as we walk in our daily lives with our relationships with our family and our co-workers. Hey, everything's fine, I'm doing well. But where the tree is, where the leaves are, there's the fruits. And we have these bitter fruits that start to produce, come alive, and they're part of the patterns and traits that we have that are negative in our lives. I took a year-long course in studying the inner healing ministry topic. It was very interesting, and it made a lot of sense to me. The goal of inner healing prayer is to find the parts of our hearts that have stopped loving. And unforgiveness is a big part of it. Actually, the biggest part of it all. That biggest root. So the key to inner healing, the wounds that we have, this key to healing them is forgiveness. Forgiveness of our fathers, forgiveness of those who've hurt us in our lives. Let me tell you what forgiveness is. I'll tell you what, it's one of the hardest things in the world to do. Can you imagine being crucified on a cross and saying, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do? And yet Jesus did it to set an example for us on how to forgive someone. Forgiveness is the main component in healing our wounds. Forgiveness is one of the toughest things you can do. Forgiveness is releasing someone of the debt they owe you. Forgiveness sometimes is a process. Sometimes you can't forgive someone for a very long time. But if you have the desire to do so, that's a good start. Forgiveness is a path to greater freedom and peace. Trust me, I know this. Freedom is a new chance to live out fully the person God has called you to be. What forgiveness is not. Forgiveness does not mean that you forget what happened. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. And I'm talking about you don't have to meet the person face to face and say, hey, I forgive you. That's not a requirement. Forgiveness does not mean that we need to excuse the offense that happened. It was an injustice that was done to you. We don't say, oh, it was okay, he must have been stressed out or, whatever. Forgiveness is not to deny our hurts or the anger that's behind it. There's justifiable anger because something wrong was done to you. And forgiveness does not require that we trust the offender. Perhaps that offender is still hurting you and others. Dr. Bob Schutz, he's a Catholic therapist. He has this great book called Be Healed. A guide to encountering the powerful love of Jesus in your life. This book was written by Dr. Bob Schutz, who says that, quote, behind most of our physical and psychological ailments are these spiritual root issues which must be addressed for full healing to take place. End quote. This book is available right outside this wall here at Pauline Media and Press or something like that. The sisters who are out there, there's about 30 copies available. There's going to be a mad rush over there. Guys, get this book. Get this book. If they sell out, get this book. I know Dr. Bob Schutz. I met him. He's a great man. Get this book. Talks a lot about what we're talking about today. In this book, Dr. Bob tells us that forgiveness can resolve issues like anxiety and depression, compulsions and addictions, even physical things like high blood pressure, stomach problems. He has examples of physical ailments being cured because someone forgave his or her father or someone who had hurt them deeply. This is a common thing that happens. It doesn't happen all the time, but miracles like that can happen. So, gentlemen, I want to leave you with this about forgiveness. I have a key in my hand. This key is the key of forgiveness. A key can lock and unlock. And oftentimes we will walk into a prison cell and we will shut the door on ourselves and we will lock it from the inside and hang the key. on the back wall because we've chosen not to forgive someone and we've put ourselves in that cell. Take that key. Get yourself out of that cell. Set yourself free by forgiving those who hurt you. Confession is a great place to start, gentlemen. Lots of priests here today. Go to confession. Go to confession. There's a lady that I met at my church a couple years back. She had not gone to confession. We were in a Bible study. I said, she had not been to confession for 20 years. I said, go to confession. You'll be so grateful that you did. She did go to confession. It changed her life. Go to confession, guys. A great way to start the process of forgiveness. I want to share my story of forgiveness and healing with you guys. In 2010, I talked about this men's retreat I went to in Florida. I had read the book, Wild at Heart. I was so excited to go. My friend and Sean and I were to leave. It was a Thursday through Sunday event, so we would fly out of Milwaukee and arrive Thursday evening at 6 o'clock when the retreat began at 6 p.m. on Thursday evening. So, unfortunately, on Wednesday evening at 9:30 p.m., I received an automated phone call from the airline saying your flight has been canceled. Okay, great. I can't tell you how much I was looking forward to going to this retreat. Now what do? I called Minneapolis, I called Madison, I called Chicago. Flights were canceled all over the place because there's this low pressure system over the eastern half of the United States that day. October 2010. So I went on Google and I found out that it would take from Neenah, Wisconsin, my hometown Neenah, Wisconsin, to get down to Marianna, Florida, it would take almost exactly 18 hours if we drove. And I called up my friend Sean and I said, Sean, if we leave around midnight, that would be 18 hours, 6 p.m. Thursday night. He said, let's do it. So he brought his stuff over, we put our stuff in the trunk, packed up, and took off around 10 minutes to midnight that night. I took the first leg of the journey, 3 hours into the journey at 3 a.m. in the morning when the devil just loves to do his thing. Because Jesus died at 3 p.m., here comes the devil when he twists things around. And I heard these voices in my head saying, turn around, you're wasting your time, don't go, it's a mistake. And these were very real things that I heard. I prayed the St. Michael the Archangel prayer. It went away, and we continued on the journey. We arrived around 6:10 that night as things were, as the meal for that evening was about to begin. And at one point, the leaders of this conference asked 125 men, how many of you had a great relationship with your dad? 2 hands were raised. It got me thinking, wow, we're all in about the same place. The leaders spoke of how we have a destiny from God as men, but our wounds prevent that destiny from becoming fully who we are meant to be. We were given a journal. In this journal, a question was asked. How do you think God the Father sees you? So I walked out onto the grounds of the retreat center, sat down by a tree, and I asked that question in prayer. God the Father, how do you see me? And the men told me, the leaders told me, you will get an answer. And so I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. There was nothing happening. And I began to cry. I said, God, you are not there, just like my father was not there for me. And right after I said that, I heard the simple words, Bob, I love you. I heard those words in my heart. The Father was speaking to me. Friday night, a counselor named Mario sat down with me. And little did I know, but he was going to provide for me inner healing prayer ministry. And what Mario did, he called upon the Holy Spirit to help me remember all those wounded periods in my life as a child that my dad caused me. And he asked me, Bob, what were you feeling during those times when your father hurt you? And so I bringing up these memories. I'm crying. These emotions are being released. They're no longer being suppressed, of anger and fear of my father and hatred of him, the humiliation and the shame. And then a vision came to me. A vision came to me at that moment. A vision of my dad. A picture, I could see his face, and my son Kyle, my oldest, his face. And it was just my dad, me, my son, my dad, me, flashing back and forth across my mind's eye. And I realized that the pain that my dad had caused me, I am now putting onto my son. My son Kyle is receiving those wounds, just like my dad wounded me. And I got to thinking, you know what? When I was a teenager, and I had to hug him because I was going out somewhere or something, or in my college years, I was going off to college, I would hug him like this. I'd give him a little bit of a hug with my hands in a fist. And I realized that my son Kyle, as a teenager, began hugging me that same exact way. Well, anyway, at the end of this inner healing prayer, Mario asked the Holy Spirit to pour the holy oil of healing over me, and I could envision just being drenched from head to toe as the Holy Spirit poured this healing over me. And I felt peace like I've never felt before. And I went jogging the next day. It was 5:30 in the morning on Saturday morning. I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. I felt like a new person. And guys, I don't like jogging. I despise jogging, but I know it's good for me to get the heart pumping. But I went out jogging that morning. I was grinning ear to ear. I was so excited about life. And I went out to the lake at the retreat center, to the end of the pier, and I raised my arms up. And I wanted to shout, "Freedom!" like William Wallace does in Braveheart. But I didn't want to wake up the other guys. They were still sleeping. But I wanted to say that so loudly because I felt that freedom. And at that moment, not 2, not 5, not 9, but 3 mallard ducks in formation fly past me, right over the lake. This lake, as the sun is coming up, mist is coming off the lake. It was so beautiful. 3 mallard ducks, as if the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit were saying to me, "Bob, welcome to your new life of freedom." The Father had another exciting day for me the next day, later that day, Saturday evening. I was able to have confession with a priest named Father Cecil from Alabama. Father Cecil could read souls. Yes, I said that right. Father Cecil could read souls like St. Padre Pio could read souls. And after my confession was over, he sat directly across from me, took off his glasses and said, "Bob, I'm going to read your soul right now." Okay, that sounds good. He looked directly in my eyes, the window of my soul, and he said to me, "Bob, what I see is a hurt little boy who's confused." He said, "This boy's confused because he wants to respect his father, but he can't because he's always being hurt by him. How does he balance that out?" Father Cecil told me, "Bob, your father was abused worse than you were by his father, my grandfather." He said, "Bob, this abuse goes back 5 generations. And Bob, you made a vow. You made a vow that you will never be like your father, didn't you?" This priest nailed it. Father Cecil nailed it. Tears were streaming down his face. And I realized that I'm not really speaking to Father Cecil. I'm speaking to God the Father. He's representing God the Father to me at that moment. Father Cecil told me, "Bob, you've been anointed. You've been anointed to break this curse of abuse in your family with your boys." And I realized that that's an important mission. Anointing means you've been given a mission. And I could say that I've taken that seriously. After that weekend, guys, I felt like a new person. A new me. I had forgiven my father because Mario had taken me through a prayer of forgiveness with my father, for my father. I forgave my dad everything that he had done, and I wanted to forgive him. Little did I realize the freedom that would come my way. Now, these bitter fruits on my tree, I can say that they've been reduced. My bitterness towards my dad, it is gone. My hatred for him, it's gone, guys. I have a calmer demeanor, although you wouldn't realize it when I'm speaking up here. But I'm so excited about my story here. My uncontrollable anger I had against my children sometimes when I would just blow up for no good reason. It's gone. It takes me a long time to get angry. I'm more patient with my wife. She's noticed it. I feel so much more tenderness towards my boys. I bless them and hug them all the time. And I try to make more time for them. I have this aversion to pride now. I do not like pride. I want to stay away from it as much as I can. I broke that vow that I made of humiliation. And there's this greater peace over me. When Mario was asking me during that inner healing moment, he said, Bob, I want you to tell me what emotion you are feeling most deeply towards your father, before he did the prayer of forgiveness. I said, Mario, anger is the deepest emotion I have for my father. And he said, no, Bob, it's something else. I said, no, Mario, I'm pretty sure it's anger. He said, no, look deeper. I prayed to the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit revealed to me the emotion most deep in my heart was humiliation. Basically, shame. Shame, that inner core of shame that I lived with. And I think it was such a revelation to me that was at the heart of these wounds. So guys, the story doesn't end there. What about my dad? Steve, if you could flip the next screen on. My dad is still alive. He's 75 years old. I wrote a letter to my dad shortly after that retreat, about a 2.5, 3-page letter to him, explaining all the times he had hurt me, what I felt when he had hurt me, and I said, Dad, I love you and I forgive you, in that letter. It took him a while, but he eventually called me and said, Bob, you know what? I'm so sorry what happened in the past. I'm so sorry that I hurt you. I wish I could have been a better father to you and your brothers and sisters. I wish I could change things. We talk on the phone 2 or 3 times a week now. On Easter 2015, I said, Dad, you know what? I'm going to start speaking about the not so good things that happened in our dysfunctional family. And you know what? Sometimes when I was younger, Dad would say, hey kids, this is your famous father. How are you doing? That was his little nickname he gave himself, famous father. I said, Dad, you wanted to be famous. Well, at Easter in 2015, when I said, Dad, is it okay if I speak on this? All he did was this. He didn't say a word. That's all he did. So I received my Father's blessing to speak on this. My dad is not the same person he was 30 or 40 years ago. He's a different person. My mom and dad, and if you would have seen what would happen in our family as children, you would have said, there's no way this marriage is going to last. Now both of them are volunteers for Retrovive, the marriage retreat, healing ministry. My dad and mom went to that as participants, and I know my dad went through a great healing time during that. So now his destiny is being fulfilled at his age of 75. He is fulfilling his mission in life, helping save other marriages, and he's lived through it. And you know what? I now hug my dad like this. I don't use fists anymore. And on a scale of 1 to 10, my relationship with my dad probably is a 9 right now. And I love my dad, and I'm very proud of who he is. So men, I know we can't all go to 4-day retreats in Florida, but there are things that we can do to start the healing process. And it all begins with that forgiveness. You know, we can do things like, you know, some of you, your father may not be here on earth anymore. I know some people who, like in the movie Courageous, this man's father had died, he put a letter and laid it on the gravestone of his father, speaking to his father right then and there. And I believe that a father can hear his son in those moments. There's things like healing masses. You could talk to a friend, a spiritual director. You can talk to a priest, maybe a Catholic family counselor like Mario was to me. Sometimes you can just start the healing process on your own. But you know what, guys? At least now you're aware of how wounds affect us, and yet how we can be healed from these wounds. The awareness is there now. So guys, I know you each all have a story. I wish I could speak to you individually for a long time. We'll do that someday in heaven, okay? So if you get the chance, come visit me afterwards. I'd like to do a prayer of inner healing. Just remain seated, and I will walk you through an inner healing prayer as we wrap things up here. And I'm going to say that this is your choice to pray this prayer. So I'm not forcing anyone to do this. It's out of your own free will that you pray this inner healing prayer. But I think it'll be a beautiful thing for you. So let's pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All you need to do is just pray this prayer in your mind. I'll just speak the words, and you can repeat them in your mind as you pray to God, our loving Father. Loving Father, I come trusting in your great love for me, and believing that only you know what is best for me. I want to be healed. I come to you now to ask that you enter my heart and heal all my wounded emotions. Bring your healing love into every corner of my heart and release all the buried negative emotions inside that have not been resolved and continue to cause me anguish. Heal all shame and despair and feelings of abandonment and rejection. Heal all feelings of anger and hatred, resentment and bitterness. Father, I choose to forgive those who have wounded me, and grant me the grace where I struggle to forgive. I ask you to bless my earthly father and all those who have hurt me in the past. As you release me from these painful emotions, fill all the empty spaces with your love, your peace and your joy, and the powerful presence of your Holy Spirit. After I have been healed, may my life be a witness to your power and glory, so that I may reach out to others too. I ask all of this in the name of your beloved Son, Jesus. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And Steve, let's see the picture of my boys. I know you don't know these boys, but picture your sons, your grandchildren here. I love these guys. I love you guys. The Father loves you too. God bless you all.